So our journey starts from the origin of the universe. I don't know how many of you here are kind of acquainted with the Vedic model of creation. So I'll try to keep it simple. If you hear some terminology which is a little bit foreign, try to explain, but I don't think it will be a problem. So today's topic is liberation through sound, and sound is a very important part in our life. We speak, we listen to music, and there is subtle sound also. We're going to explore all these. But before I start, I will chant some mantras for fitness, which will promote the right atmosphere of gratitude to our previous spiritual teachers, so forth. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam dojayamudhirayet nasta prayesho badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naki Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Bhutale Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunya Deshaya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Chaita Garadara Vyasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Panchakalpata Rubhyastra Pasindubhya Evacha Nanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, as I was mentioning, today we're beginning our journey at the origin of the universe, when called basically the
Hey, I'm not sure. Sorry to cut you off, Matanga. I'm not sure if the others, like maybe Carlo or the others, are you able to hear clearly? Because for me, sometimes the sound is cutting.
Yeah, you're breaking up in between.
It's not actually super clear. I think maybe I'm not sure how much signal you have, but if you're also speaking, like when your voice is projected, if it goes into the camera, then it's easier to hear. Like sometimes when it's switching away, it's not so clear. So just see how you go. And if it's playing up, I'll let you know again.
Do you hear me nicely now? Do you hear me nicely
now? Yeah.
What about
it's a little bit breaky, yeah.
Using one stand, maybe that's doing the problem. What if I do like this? Okay, it works.
Yeah, maybe let's hear you speak and I'll let you know if there's some issue.
Yes. Because I was putting it in this stand and it's covering the bottom part. Maybe that's the problem. Now it's better?
Anyway, for now it's good, yeah. Let's hope.
Okay, so the beginning of the universe, there is the so-called Brahma Jyoti, which is the effulgence of the eternal world, which basically becomes transformed into material energy. And that primordial mass is called pradhana. That is basically the original substance of all the elements in this material world. And that substance basically becomes agitated by kala, or time, which is the glance of the Lord, of divinity. And when that substance becomes agitated, it transforms and it becomes the elements of creation, basically. Whatever we are seeing in this world, all these elements, they are all created from this initial process. And the first element that comes into play, the most subtle element, is the false ego. Or basically, this is the element which promotes the identification that we are having in this world. Everybody, as we heard even in mundane circumstances, everybody has an ego, a sense of I, and many people have inflated egos or false egos. So this is the famous false ego. This is how it comes about, the false identification. And then from the false ego, there is an interaction with the three modes of the material nature. I don't know if you're also acquainted with this. This is also another big topic in the Bhagavad Gita. Basically, you have the three modes, which are the lowest mode, low class, middle class, and upper class. You have the mode of goodness, which is the best, the mode of rajas or passion, and you have the mode of tamas or darkness. So when the false ego interacts with all these elements, more elements are generated. Just like, for example, the false ego interacts with the mode of goodness, and then the mind is generated. So the mind is functioning in that particular realm, and all the various elements and demigods which are in charge of that facility are generated. Then the false ego interacts with the passion, with the other mode of nature, and then intelligence is generated. And then, lastly, the false ego is mixed with ignorance or tamas, and from that comes sound as we know it. And that is basically the basis of all the other elements that come after, because mind, intelligence, and false ego, these are the so-called subtle elements. And after that come the gross elements, from which sound is the most subtle. So mind, intelligence, and false ego, very subtle elements, and then sound is generated. And then from sound, the ether. And then from ether, there is fire, water, and earth. And also the sense of touch, the sense of smell, and all the other senses. I won't go so much into details. They're formed also. And sound is basically pervading all the other elements. You will find a succession, like sound, then fire, means that fire is containing sound, and then water is containing the previous elements, fire and sound, and then earth is containing all of them together. And that is the most gross type of element. And this sound is all pervasive. This is it's called the Nada Brahma, the original primordial sound, which is basically the fundament of existence. Even after that, we know that Brahma, who is the first living entity, who is generated from the navel of Mahavishnu, is created by Krishna himself. He is confused and he doesn't know what to do. Then he hears tapa, which is the first ever thing that he ever heard. And he understood that tapa means that he has to undergo some type of meditation and austerity. So he did that, and then because of his austerity penance, the Lord came and he revealed all the Vedic wisdom to him in his heart. And we even find this in the scriptures, in the modern scriptures, that there is a passage in the John's Gospel which says, for example, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And actually we find a similar verse, if not the same verse, in the Rig Veda, which is the oldest scripture according to the scholars of the modern days, which says that in the beginning, God and his Supreme Spirit alone existed. And from the Supreme Spirit of the God proceeded Hiranyagarbha or Brahma. So in this way, we are seeing again how this Nada Brahma or Shabda Brahma is being received by Brahma himself, who is kind of the secondary creator, or oftentimes is designated as the engineer of the universe. So by the mercy of this technology, then he starts to create the various parts of everything that is. For example, the planets, the living entities, which are classified in human beings, insects, animals, and the progenitors of the universe. And how does he does that? Of course, through sound, through transcendental sound. We have these so-called bija mantras, seed mantras. Bija means seed. So by pronouncing the seed, the transcendental sound enters into the elements, and then some forms start to emerge. For example, there is the mantra for water. So the mantra for water generates water. And actually, to understand it even better, there is no difference in Sanskrit, which is designated as the perfect language. There is no difference between water, between the word water and the subject itself. So whenever the sound is generated, there is no difference between the sound, the mantra, and the subject. So in this way, Brahma generated all the planets, all the trees, whatever, just by transcendental sound vibration. So this Shabda or Nada Brahma, transcendental sound, it is also known as a Paurusheya, which means that it doesn't have any human origin. It's not material, basically. This is the sound that pervades everything, and it is the sound that we find in all the Vedic scriptures. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, there are mantras which, when heard, they can basically give you a higher state of consciousness. They can reveal a new way of understanding the world. They can, we can also say, they can purify your mind and your consciousness. For example, there is the famous verse which says 2.13, Dehi nos minyata dehe, kaumaram yauvanam jara, that the spirit soul is passing through bodies, and the spirit soul is eternal. So the self is eternal and is just migrating from one body to another body. So this is a revelation. This is a new understanding that not everyone has. Or there is, for example, the verse which says, Yehi samsparsha jaboka dukkha yonaya evate, that the sages, those who are sober, they don't engage into sensual pleasures, because those sensual pleasures, they lead to suffering because they're temporary. So in this way, this sound vibration is liberating the mind. Mantra, as we know, the word mantra means mind, and tra means trayate, to liberate. So the Shabda, the transcendental sound, is liberating us. And there is, of course, a sound inside of us. On the level of soul, there is a vibration of a very subtle sound which basically reveals our intentions, because we have consciousness and desire. And this consciousness and desire is being expressed through this very subtle sound. So we're vibrating on that platform, and then whatever we are desiring comes to the next platform, which is the platform of intelligence. And then from intelligence, it becomes more kind of, how can we say, it becomes more clear, more expanded, up to the point where this desire becomes visualized into the mind. The mind is kind of the most gross of these subtle elements. So in the mind, then we start acting and planning on that desire. And then what happens? Then there is action or creation. Just like, for example, once they ask our dear spiritual master, how did they create? No, he asked his disciples, how did they create these skyscrapers in New York, for example? And they started saying things like, oh, they concrete, they brought the concrete, or they were men, machines, whatever. Prabhupada said, no, it was created by speaking. It all started with speaking. But even before that, thinking. And if we look at the primal level, it was the desire of the soul that communicated with the intelligence, which then started interacting with the mind, and the thoughts are present. And then afterwards, when one starts thinking about something, about creating something, then he starts speaking, start discussing the idea. And then from that, a skyscraper is created, or a machine, the iPhone, and so forth. So in the same manner, we are also given the same facility. We are also small creators. We are creating some imperfect technologies, airplane. But the big creators, they can create a mosquito or a fly, and so many wonderful items. And with sound, one can also destroy. For example, we know the emperors in the past, the kings, they can just say a word and somebody just gets killed. He just does something wrong and the emperor just says, that's it. And by his desire, by his words, he gets destroyed. Or sometimes we can say something bad to a person, and that can ruin his life. There are people who suicide because somebody bullied them. And we can also say something positive. We can also use speech to do good, to empower people, to inspire. And even modern science is explaining, has started grasping all these all these subtle manifestations. The scientists, they started exploring wave phenomena, and this branch of science is called cymatics, where they are running sound waves of different frequencies through a membrane. There is a membrane, and then on the membrane they put sand, for example, and when different frequencies are run, different patterns arise. Now I have my presentation here with some images. You can check it on Google later, maybe. But basically, on the membrane, when frequencies are run and different geometrical, like perfect geometrical figures arise, and you can see the patterns of nature are there. For example, there is the pattern of the sunflower seed, not the sunflower seed, the sunflower flower, or the pattern of the turtle, the turtle's back on the shell, or the pattern of, I don't know, a flower, a rose. Just by changing the frequencies, one can understand that these frequencies, basically, they are shaping the forms of nature. And it can even becomes more amazing when you add water. Water also generates some forms, and you can also put solids in the water, so the water starts bubbling and creating all kinds of crazy forms. And you can clearly see it looks like a mini mountain or a hill or whatever we see in nature. So this is also another kind of evidence of how sounds work. And there is also one Japanese or Chinese scientist, I don't remember his name, who started studying water itself and how when water is being exposed to different environments or even to emotion, it responds differently. And then how he basically observed that he was freezing different types of water. For example, he was getting the water of a very pure place, a glacier maybe in Iceland or somewhere in the mountains. He was freezing the water, and he was observing these very beautiful octagonal whatever crystals, just like snowflakes. The snowflakes, they have very beautiful crystals. And he also took the water from the sewers or some polluted source, some polluted river, and he froze the water, and he saw that the shape is not so nice. It looks repulsive even. And he also started saying words into the water. For example, thank you. And then he froze the water and he saw these beautiful crystals. But then he also took this water and he said, I want to kill you. I despise you. And then he froze the water and he observed that a whole another picture came out of these crystals, which are very, disharmonic, not very nice, not very nice shapes. And he also took one time water from, again, a polluted source, which wasn't looking very nice. And he brought it to a monastery, a Buddhist monastery, where the Buddhists are chanting and praying, they're chanting the Om vibration. And after a session of chanting and praying near the water, then he froze it and he saw that there is a difference from before and after. So these sound vibrations, the mantras, they are basically fixing up the environment. And also another important study that was discovery that was made in the modern world by Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who is a Nobel Prize winner, because she found the so-called telomeres, which are enzymes in the cells. Basically, on the DNA strand, there are these ending. They like to designate them as the end of the shoelace. Your shoelace has an ending. So that ending is the telomere. And when age is progressing in our life, when some irregular habits or bad habits like smoking and drinking or stress are occurring, then these telomeres, they wear down, and basically they are how can I say? They are sacking the structure of the DNA, so that promotes more aging and more diseases, basically, by being worn out. And so the scientists, they conducted some experiments after they realized that they saw that in older individuals, unhealthy individuals, these telomeres, they were like messed up, and healthier individuals, they had kind of a good standing telomeres. So they did a variety of experiments. They took a group of people, and they put them on a healthy lifestyle, vegetarian diet for a certain time, or relaxing music, for a certain period. They were listening every day to relaxing music. And then they found out that, for example, after the therapy, 3% of the telomeres increased in this particular experiment with music. Then they took another group and they put them under mindfulness meditation, which is known to be very beneficial. So after a few months of regular sessions, they saw that the telomeres increased by 17%. So it's even better. And then among those type of various types of meditations, they also conducted an experiment with mantra meditation. And what came out was pretty surprising, that these mantras, the exposure to these transcendental sounds increased the telomeres by 43%. So by doing kirtan, by participating in these gatherings, it is really beneficial, not just for the physical body, which is basically what they have been observing. One will age less, one will get less disease, one will be happier, but also on a subtle platform, it is very beneficial for the soul. It is liberating us from all these false misconceptions and all these negative thoughts and emotions that we are having in our life that we don't want. And it is also proven in our tradition how by engaging in mantra meditation, by studying the mantras, understanding them through intelligence, how after prolonged practice, after decades, one is able to change his entire existence. Basically, one becomes surprisingly more peaceful, less prone to anger. One becomes more compassionate, and just overall more happy. And of course, all the bad habits that we had from before, all the laziness, procrastination, or some stuff like overeating or even smoking and drinking, these are the first thing to go, and so forth and so on. So the best activity, of course, for us, which is prescribed by the yoga scriptures, is to imbibe and to engage into this chanting of transcendental sounds. And in particular, we are emphasizing in our tradition the chanting of the Maha Mantra, of course, because that's the meaning of Maha Mantra, means the greatest mantra of deliverance. So by regular chanting of this mantra, when you add up some instruments, maybe your favorite guitar or piano or whatever you like, your favorite genre of music, and you bring in the Maha Mantra and some other nice lyrics maybe, which kind of adds up, then this practice becomes really powerful. And then when you add up your favorite friends and mentors in a group chanting together, then it becomes even more powerful, very, very powerful. But there's no comparison if you do the same thing and you go outside and you share it with people. When we share this transcendental sound vibration with people who are not so knowledgeable about it, or just stuck in bad habits and in bad misunderstanding of their own life, there is something mystical that happens. They, of course, they undergo the process of transformation, but we are also getting benefit. And this is my spiritual teacher. He used to say in his lectures many times that this is the only currency that it never gets exhausted. The more you give it, and the more you get it back by imbibing this practice of chanting the mantras and by giving it away. It's so auspicious. Everybody benefits from it. So like this, I spoke for more than half an hour. I think that's enough. So now maybe, I don't know, shall we do a small kirtan and then a little bit of discussion time? Is that all right with you, Guru guy?
Yeah, it's perfect. Just one thing I'll say about kirtan, like on Zoom, like please chant. I'd be honored. Just it's a little bit, the call and response sometimes is a little bit awkward. So if you want to lead a kirtan, I would recommend you chant for some time. But the call and response is like on you, and then we can also respond accordingly from our positions. But it's like on Zoom, it's a little bit. So please chant, but just don't have so much expectation from all the devotees. You're welcome. You're welcome to keep your mics on. You're welcome to keep yourself muted. Whatever.
I think I've never chanted on Zoom, so thank you for enlightening me. on this?
Yeah, usually like I like to just chant like a few mantras just to like absorb the knowledge of the lesson, and then it's the audience we can also sing as well. But just like it's usually I sing the call and the response, so then there's no awkwardness with the Zoom responding and timing and stuff like that.
Okay, let's try a few mantras and then open for questions.
Yeah.
Comments. Okay, simple tune. I think all of you know it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All together. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Congratulations, you have increased your telomeres in your body and you live longer.
Usually I'm on this on yours where you're sitting, Matanga. So this was a really wonderful experience for me actually. I was always thinking Zoom's like a little bit awkward for this, but actually that was really wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, thanks for inspiring that. I really liked how you kind of took this like picture of the Vedic conception of the universe and then like really brought it down, especially this bit that really captivated me was you're talking about like Lord Brahma, like the engineer of the universe, and then the sound is like non-different to the object, and in that way he's like, man, this was very like capturing from my mind. I didn't actually hear this before after so many years, or maybe I heard it but it never went inside, and I found that really interesting. But I just had one question like for you before, if any you guys don't mind, like you're talking about how with human civilization, we've been able to build airplanes and machines, but then you see like with Lord Brahma or like, ultimately the creator, God, Krishna, divinity, whatever, he's able to create like, a little mosquito. So my question is like now we see with technology progressing, I feel like humans also have this capacity to make these tiny little drones and things like this. Like now I think we see examples of that in nature. So then when I hear a statement like that, my like kind of mind starts to think like, well, hey, hang on a second, humans are able to create these kind of things. So I was just wondering, it's a little bit of a curveball question, but how you would feel about that, how you would respond to that.
What is exactly the question? How are humans able to create? What is?
No, it's almost like you were making this point like, ultimately like this universe is way more complex and intricate than what humans are able to achieve, and this is kind of pointing or like an argument for like a creator. But at the same time, we see as technology is progressing that more and more humans are able to like replicate things that we see in nature that once upon a time we thought were impossible. So that was my question, because like, ultimately like this sound, like the Vedic conception is sound is coming, like you even quoted the Bible and it's beautiful, because I was also thinking about this verse lately from the Bible, but how in the beginning was the word. I believe it's in the Old Testament. The beginning was the word. So sound, it's all coming from sound. And it is, that's the Vedic conception. It's all sound. And through sound, that's how we're going to liberate ourselves. That's how we're going to, sound is like the alarm clock waking up the sleeping soul. So therefore, you know, we're on the authority of the Vedas, we're saying sound is the solution, sound is everything. But then it's like, I guess it's a little bit devil's advocate playing like, yeah, but you know, but at the same time, like, why should we trust this as an authority? Why should we put our attention there? And I know you made this presentation and you talked about obviously like proof of the pudding is in eating. We speak like this. There's so many benefits are there through science. Like you made this joke after the kirtan, these things in our brains now they've become better or whatever. But it was
in the cells.
specifically on this, the cells. Yeah. So it was specifically about this point on the technology. Like we see, like humans are able to replicate science or nature, sorry, through science. So why have this faith in the authority of the Veda? I think that's my question.
Yeah, why have the faith even if we're able to create? Well, the answer itself lies in the pastime where I was explaining how Brahma was generated from the lotus of Krishna, and he was completely confused. It's like, you know, you wake up sometimes in the morning or in the middle of the day, you had like a very deep nap, and you wake up and you barely know your name. So in this way, Brahma, he didn't know what's going on. He didn't know who he is. He was in complete darkness, basically. And that is the ignorance that is pervading this shadow world, which is a reflection of reality, which is basically the effulgence that gets transformed, like I was explaining in the beginning. So Brahma, he wasn't able to do anything without the transcendental sound, which was granted to him by Krishna, only after surrendering. And then after he attained this status, he was able to create. And just like Brahma, he's like very high level of creation. You know, his body is said that it's made of pure intelligence, so it's completely different. So he was able to create all these things by the mercy of Krishna, and he is in quality the same. We know there is also this verse in the Bible which says that the human being, man, is created from the image of God. So in quality, we are also creators like God, but in quantity, with a little bit of, you know, vapor from our mouth, we can create a little bit of breathing, we can create a little bit of vapor. But Krishna, he can create an ocean. And like I was saying, by using our brains, and intelligence, we can replicate nature, and we can create an airplane, a car, or a phone, or all these things that we have. But the original is there in nature. So we are taking, how do you say? We're copying nature, basically. Or for example, the camera. You know, nowadays so much visual stuff is going, so much importance is being put on filming and photos, and this is all done by the grace of the photo and video cameras. What are they doing? Basically, they're taking the same model of the eye, and they're putting it into they're replicating it electronically. They're putting it into a machine, and so now you're using something that is created by God. You're basically labeling it. You're copywriting it, and but the original technology is there, so we cannot deny the original technology, and the original technology is perfect. So our technologies are very, very, very fragile and very unreliable. Just like you were saying here now in Zoom, you know, it can break any moment. Or the plane that is flying, you know, you have to regularly repair it. But our body, for example, the marvelous, the amazing technology which is going on inside all this, it's a machine. You know, the heart pumping blood, the lungs, and everything is so perfectly connected. We can't even imagine. We can't even go nearby understanding and replicating that. So that's a much more complicated and perfect technology, because you don't need to you know, to tell your heart pump blood, or to your lungs to transform the air into energy, whatever. It just goes on naturally. So this is, I guess, I don't know if I explained it enough. This is the proof that
I really like this response. It was beautiful. Like one thing that really captured me was like, the original technology is there actually, and we're just replicating it. That's a very, very, very intelligent thing that you said. I see Rahul, he has his hand up. Did you want to say something? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Prabhu, for organizing, and thank you, Matanga Prabhu, for the wonderful lecture. I have been believing in this concept of transcendental sound, which can liberate us. But I feel it's like whatever I have heard, it's not that simple and straightforward. It's just not like you just chant this sound and you are being liberated. There are many more aspects, more relevant. Maybe there are even courses, chant now courses, are offensive, our intention, our faith, so many elements that are attached to the process of chanting the sound. So my question is to go deeper into this process, and how do you suggest, like I'm not able to follow the best standards like the morning chanting. Sometimes I chant while walking, and maybe Krishna recognizes my intention. I want to do the best, but the kind of life I'm having, I'm not able to do the best which I could do, and then it's really a kind of regret.
Sometimes it's a big struggle, and sometimes it's you I guess maybe have some experience where you've like tasted something, but then it's not easy to like maintain this kind of. Anyway, please, if you have some response, Matanga, I'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, very nice question. Of course, naturally, that's the next thing that arises. How to do it properly, how to go in depth, and so many more things can be said. Entire books are written on the subject matter, and we can speak for decades, maybe, how to do it properly. Just like with any discipline, with any subject matter, you're a beginner, and then you start. It's a process. You're a beginner, and then you move forward. You become intermediate, and then you become expert. And of course, the practice of the expert has no comparison with the practice of the beginner. So this is just an introduction and a brief explanation of how sound, the transcendental sound vibration, works. And one important thing to know is that the mantras, especially the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is the most potent, no matter how we chant it, no matter how distracted we are or what kind of setting, it is always working. To what extent is working, that's when our kind of conditioning comes into play. So that's why we have all this process, which is called sadhana bhakti, which is basically disciplining us, which is putting us into the most favorable condition to be able to imbibe, to be exposed to and to understand the transcendental sound. So, for example, raising up early in the morning is helpful. Taking cold shower, or being with people who are positive, who understand what you're doing and who are encouraging you, that's also a big boost. So many elements. And we can use all these things to our advantage. What was the original question? Can you repeat it again, because I lost my train of thought.
He's saying like it's so sometimes like we have this understanding of like what we think is the highest standard of devotion, or what's required for us to really like perfect our practice, and then that conception that we have, we're not close to it. It means like he wants to do more, but then the bhakti acharyas, the teachers in our line, they've laid down an example of how to follow it.
We have to do whatever we can with whatever we have at the present moment. And we have to always remember that whatever we can and whatever we have at the moment is more than enough. And we have to build it up. And like I was explaining, on the level Bhaktivedanta Maharaj explains in his seminar, which is, I took actually many things from it. He's explaining how on the level of gross speech, when you're chanting the mantras, that's one level, but then you have the mind. So we often hear how you're saying something, but you're thinking another thing. And then on the level of intelligence, you're desiring completely different thing. So it's like, complete double dealing. So it's a hypocrisy. So by analyzing this, by understanding, one can go deeper. One can try to focus his mind more. One can just be aware, and so many things can be done. And understanding the scriptures, applying our intelligence, not just reading and repeating, but trying to understand them, because this is a sound that basically enters our consciousness and purifies us. And like this, one has to just start from scratch with whatever he has and just be patient. One has to be patient and enthusiastic. It won't happen over a few years, but even if it happens after a few decades, it's worth it, because we know that we are here. The spirit soul is here since time immemorial. So in the face of eternity, what are a few decades? But in a few decades, one can really progress, even if he is placed in a very unfavorable environment where he has a lot of responsibilities and the family life or addictions and so forth. Nevertheless, all of us, me, I can speak for myself, Uruguay, and so many others, who were completely different people like 5 to 10 years ago. And the process really works. And I'm still feeling a beginner, for example. I don't know if
this
that's
is a nice
covering.
point, that sincerity is like, it's not just sincerity, but like, like not letting go, I think, is the most important thing. And I have some experience where like seems like you really get in a very low place. Even you may still be chanting or whatever, but still you're in a very low place. But somehow if you hanging on to this, you get many opportunities to slowly. And I think that's a very organic thing. And that should not be a deterrent. It should be like kind of embraced and accepted, and just like be okay with, someone said this to me, be okay with not being okay, if that makes sense, which means like, it's a struggle, but in that struggle we have this connection. Even if it's okay, we may want $1 billion, but right now we don't even have $1,000 in the bank. But like, okay, are we gonna lament that we don't have $1 billion? No, we're gonna work with what we have and then slowly go forward. And of course we get help along the way. We get help from within, from the super soul within, and externally from the saints and the great wonderful humans in this world that are there also to guide us. That's part of it.
We have to be stubborn about the practice, because it's not just about faith. You have faith, but then you have a direct experience, and that direct experience is kind of what keeps you going on, because you get a spiritual happiness out of doing this. And so we have to be stubborn. We have to continue, even though there will be so many difficulties, because we are very, very conditioned, and we don't even understand how conditioned we are. But the more we practice, the more we understand it. And like this, it's a process.
Yeah, so thanks for the beautiful question. I mean, we're theoretically at time, but if anybody had something else they wanted to quickly add to the discussion.
Yeah, I just have, one comment about, the God's creation. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, about the God's creation and human creation. So, I mean, like you said before, Prabhuji, that, humans can only imitate, and humans can only create from what God has created, like the raw material. Humans cannot create anything on their own. That's the basic difference. God can create, from nothing. But humans, whether you are creating camera, whether you are creating buildings, the raw material is created by the ultimate, the God. That's the only difference I can think of.
Yeah.
So,
a beautiful point.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a beautiful lecture. I mean, we learn a lot about the mantras and the Bij mantras, and how powerful it is. Mm-hmm. It can really, change. So
Yeah,
thank you.
even nowadays, we hear about um, lighting fire with mantras. The brahmanas, they used to light fire with mantras, and I'm sure that even nowadays you can find still in South India there are some very pure souls that can do that. But as the example implies, one has to have a certain level of purity on the level of the mind and intelligence. So one can manifest, and we know all these big yogis in the scriptures, like Durvasa, no, not Durvasa, Vipamitra or whoever was able to create a planet just by these spiritual mantras. And yeah, but this technology is not ours. Shabda Brahman is the eternal breath of Mahavishnu. And if we claim property, then we are thieves if we think that it's ours. So it's
That's
always
a
good to
beautiful
remind
meditation.
ourselves.
This Shabda Brahman is the breath of Mahavishnu. Very beautiful. So anyway, we're perfectly on time. I think it's a nice place to stop. May all of you please shower your blessings and appreciations to Matanga Guru for his time and energy, and also similarly for all of you. It's so nice to come together and speak like this, and just keep your ears open and your eyes on your screens, not too much, but for an email from Chan now that when the next live event will be. We're trying to do them more and more and bring on more guest speakers. And when you guys come and participate, this is also giving us strength and encouragement to do so. So thanks to everybody.